I'm sure you have wondered if I want to buy an ongoing hair salon, for instance, how do I go about it? It's not just your home that you can buy and the escrow handled by your escrow agent. You can also go through an escrow process to buy a business or its assets. This is Juliana too, and this is part two of my bulk sale series. I want to talk a little bit more in depth on subjects that I briefly talked about in part one, like what is needed, what to decide first, and what to avoid so that we can minimize issues. So let's go ahead and do our disclaimer first. The information contained in this video is only intended to provide a guide in the various California-only transactions to which the information is applicable. No representation is made as to the legal validity of the information or the adequacy of it in any specific transaction. The information contained should only be used after consultation with your legal and your financial counsel. The sale of a business opportunity is also called a bulk sale or an asset sale. And in California's escrow industry, it characterizes the sale of an ongoing business and particularly the assets used in the operation of that business. For instance, a restaurant, a motel, a car wash, an optometrist. The UCC law says that anyone contemplating buying a business worth between $10,000 and $5 million should open an escrow, and the escrow will follow the guidelines of the UCC and the BNP codes so that the creditors of the seller or his government tax debts are paid. When you go about doing an escrow, deliver to the escrow agent the necessary information to open the escrow. And think about these following points. First of all, who are the sellers? What is their corporate entity if it's under a corporate entity? Do these names match the names on the licenses? If not, why not? Is a seller a corporate entity? Are they a corporate entity registered in another state? Most important, are they registered to do business in California? Are they in good standing? If so, we have to do a search at the Secretary of State's office in California, as well as in that other state in which the seller was registered. Does the seller have another address as its main location or executive office? If so, we are going to need to publish in the location of that executive office as well as the location of the business. For instance, the seller may own several chain stores in different locations, but he has a separate corporate office. What are the buyer's names? Or are they going to be forming a corporate entity to purchase? Once they decide this at opening, do not change the names in the middle of the transaction, or we are going to have to republish, and that is going to delay the transaction. More so than in a real estate transaction, the bulk sale opening forms must be signed and returned as soon as possible. Why? Because of publication. Why do we have to do the publication? We have to do the publication because we need to notify the general public, and particularly the creditors, that the business is being sold so that they can make their claims. The signed notice to creditors form is going to be recorded at the county recorder's office, and it must be delivered in time for this publication company to fit it into their deadline for the next publication. If the publication, for instance, comes out on a Wednesday, we would want to send the notice to creditors to the publication company by Monday. If there is a delay, the publication date is going to be delayed by 1 week till the next time that the newspaper is published. Now, the publication takes place 12 business days before the escrow can close. This will give the creditors time to submit their claims. And the publications are put in the newspaper in the judicial area where the business is located, as well as the area in which the seller's executive office is located. So do not delay the signing of the notice to creditors form that you get at the opening of escrow. Creditor claims, let's talk about that. Within the 12 business days, the creditors have the right or the opportunity to submit their claims to the escrow for unpaid invoices. And if these invoices are approved by the seller, then they get paid at closing. If they are not approved, the code then gives the creditors certain rights to pursue, and the escrow agent has certain responsibilities in holding the claimed funds. One of the other things that the escrow officer has to do is they have to alert the government agencies. The three government agencies are the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, or CDTFA, which collects the sales tax that the owner of the business has to pay for the products that they sold. The Employment Development Department, the EDD, which collects the employment taxes collected by the employer for the employee, and the Franchise Tax Board, the FTB, which collects the business taxes. Without obtaining the releases, we are unable to give the seller his net proceeds. The releases protect the buyer from any of the seller's unpaid tax liabilities. And there you have it. What is important for the buyer of the business is that they will be released of all successor liabilities, which are liabilities that belong to the seller but would attach to the buyer if the codes and the releases are not obtained correctly. Now, on the closing, once the 12 business days has passed, the escrow can proceed towards closing. As long as, of course, as the lease is located, the location lease, or the other conditions of the transaction are satisfied and the buyer's funds are in. Once the buyer takes possession, then the seller will file his final tax returns to the government agency so that the releases can be given. The code sections for the CDTFA, EDD, and FTB state that the full sales price is to be held until they give the releases. We suggest that at least the seller's proceeds are held so that the claims can be paid. We don't know how much the seller's tax liabilities are, or if his proceeds are going to be sufficient to cure. But the agencies have the right to audit the seller's files. So if the seller has not been filing his monthly or quarterly or yearly tax returns correctly, this is when it will all come out, when he sells his business. Now, if we have a liquor license transfer, the California Department of Alcohol and Beverage Control, the ABC, is in charge of all the liquor license transfers. No license can be transferred or the escrow closed until they give the authorization to close, or the ABC 2264. An escrow has to be utilized, by the way, to transfer any type of a liquor license. A transfer of the liquor license in a business requires all the standard bulk sale process, as I mentioned before, plus the escrow agent has to follow what is designated in the BNP code, which is the Business and Professions Code. So when you have a liquor license to be transferred, here is what you're going to need to look for. A 90-day escrow. Be prepared for a 90-day escrow. The buyer should be prepared that their spouse, or if it's a corporate entity, all the members of that corporate entity, everyone is going to have to be involved in a background investigation and be fingerprinted. And this will take time, hence why we say a 90-day escrow. The notice of the license transfer is made public by recording it at the county recorder's office and by posting the notice on the door of the premises. The buyer should be prepared to give ABC a copy of the landlord's approval of the new lease. ABC will also probably need to see a general drawing of the interior of the location where they are going to be operating. And ABC will also research and physically inspect the business premises and make sure that there are no governmental code restrictions that will not allow the sale of liquor at that location. No funds are to be paid by the buyer to the seller outside of escrow or even released through escrow before closing. This is an absolute must. No money transfer hands until that authorization to close is received by escrow. If the buyer is getting a new loan, the lender must give the escrow an unconditional letter of funding, which the escrow is going to rely on before the actual closing. Once the escrow is in a position to close, when all the funds are in, including this lender's unconditional letter of funding, and all the conditions are satisfied, then the request to close is sent to ABC. And it takes about 2 weeks to process through ABC and for it to be returned. Once the authorization is received, then escrow must close the next day or very shortly thereafter. If escrow does not close immediately, any liquor license sale violations will become the buyer's problem, even if it was the seller who sold the liquor and incurred the violation. So that's something to remember. Now, let's talk a little bit about mixed sale transactions. That one is involving real estate as well as business. The processes that apply to the sale of the real estate, and by the way, you can look at my Back to the Basics videos if you have questions on that. Those processes will come into play, plus the standard processes of handling a bulk sale. So here are some of the questions that you should ask yourself before you enter into such a mixed transaction. What is the breakdown of the purchase price? What is the amount that you're going to assign to the sale of the business? What about to the real estate? Is the buyer getting a new loan? Because the new lender will have some input on how they break down the purchase price. Who will be the purchasing entity of each? Will they be different? Who is the seller entity of each? Are they different? The chances are very high that 2 escrow transactions will be needed to be open to reflect the different participants in each type of sale, the real estate and the business. And if you are opening 2 transactions, are they going to close on time? And if there's a liquor license involved in the bulk sale, you will need to figure in more time for the closing. What other parts of the business sale needs to be addressed before closings? What other contingencies? For instance, special operating licenses, brand approval, franchise approval. There is no doubt that every step of the way you will need a qualified and knowledgeable escrow agent to guide you and to help you. You will need to provide them with as much information as possible. Remember, what you might not think is important might be important to the smooth processing of your transaction. Keep the communications between you and your escrow agent open. So today, my t-shirt for this session features Chicago, the band. This is in recognition that they will receive a special merit award at the Grammys on October 16, 2020. My favorite songs from this iconic band: If You Leave Me Now, Will You Still Love Me, and of course their #1 hit, 25 or 624. This is Juliana too. Thank you for watching. I hope you got some good information. See the description below for more information and links to other interesting areas. Please like me or subscribe to my video channel for more information on the escrow process. Until the next time, think escrow.